want to call a regular board meeting to the public schools Tuesday, November 24th, 2020 to order. And our first order of business is that we have to designate a treasurer pro tem. In the absence of Mr. Steckschulte, it is necessary to appoint a treasurer pro tem. I move to appoint the deputy superintendent as treasurer pro tem for this meeting only. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Vasquez.
Yes.
Ms. Barnes.
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg.
Yes.
Ms. Gerken.
Yes.
Ms. Varwig.
Yes.
Okay, now that we have the treasurer pro tem, thank you very much. Now we just need to have the regular roll call. Mr. Gant.
Mr. Vasquez.
Yes.
Ms. Barnes.
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg.
Here.
Ms. Gerken.
Here.
Ms. Varwig.
Here.
1.03 is the pledge. So can we say the pledge at this time? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. 1.04 is the mission and vision statement. Mr. or Dr. Durant.
Yes, Toledo Public Schools' mission is to produce competitive college and career-ready graduates through rigorous curriculum across all grade levels by implementing the Ohio Good Learning Standard with fidelity. Our vision statement strives to be an A-rated school district whose graduates are college and career ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durant. Section 2 is presentations. Dr. Durant, will you continue with the presentations?
Yes, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Patty Mazur. Please take it from here, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My computer is, oh, there I am. Okay, happy Tuesday, happy November board meeting, happy almost Thanksgiving. We have 4 employees to celebrate tonight as they prepare for their retirement. That is Mr. Kevin Butcher. He is a 4th grade teacher, and he is retiring with 25.3 years of service to the district. Vivian Renner, she is a food service worker, and she is also retiring with 25.3 years of service to TPS. Barbara Jackson is retiring. She is a 4th grade teacher, and she has 31 years of service with the district. And Ms. Denise Potts, a 2nd grade teacher, also retiring with 31 years of service. And together, these fine folks have given 112 years, 0.6 months of service to Toledo Public Schools, and we certainly wish them all the best.
Thank you. Congratulations to all of our retirees. Normally, we would be there to cheer them on, and unfortunately, we're having this meeting by remote, and I don't know how much longer we're going to have to do this, but for right now, there's no end in sight. Anything else, Ms. Mazur?
This will conclude the portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Durant. Section 3 are community comments. Mr. Gant, did we have any community requests for community comments come in?
We do not.
All right, thank you. Section 4 is organizational input. Is there anybody on the webinar here from Parent Congress? Okay, I don't believe so. How about from TAAP? Is Mr. Emilio Ramirez available?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm here at the paper pickup for the old Newsboys today, so that's where I'm at. I just want to say happy Thanksgiving for everybody. and to stay safe, stay healthy, and keep your 6 feet away from everybody. Thank you. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. Same to you. Next would be from TFT, Mr. Kevin Dalton. Is Mr. Dalton on with us?
He is not.
Okay. Then the next person would be from AFSCME, and that would be Miss Dawn Bailey. Is Miss Dawn Bailey on with us?
She is not.
All right. Section 5 is the comments by the board. And is there anybody who wants to make comments from the board?
I just want to say thank you to the teachers. I see a lot of teachers doing some great work for food for our kids, and they're by their own means. I have been seeing stuff on Facebook, hearing things in the community, just to make sure families get meals for the upcoming holidays. So thank you for doing that. Emilio, thank you for, participating for the holidays as well. So that's really good to see.
Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Vasquez.
Ms. Varwick?
Yeah, I would just like to also thank the staff. I know that this is really difficult. Watching my own family have to teach from home, it's not easy. And we know that the families, it's not easy for them either. It's not easy for the students. And boy, I cannot wait until we have a vaccine and we can move forward. And we're not in this situation any longer, but just I want the staff and the families to know that we are thinking of them daily. And we are, at least I am, I'm praying for all of us to return to what a normal will be.
Any other comments?
Mr. Vasquez?
Ms. Zuckerberg?
Yep, I just wanted to take a moment. It's a tough thing. Doing everything as remotely as possible is the right thing. I run numbers and send them across to the administration on a semi-regular basis, and it's been really bad, like so bad you didn't need to run the numbers for the past week, but I ran them today to look. And according to today's numbers, in the past 14 days, every 137 residents of Lucas County has been diagnosed with COVID in the past 2 weeks. That's a gigantic number, and there's no way you can put people into a school building without having 137 people there, even if it's hybrid. And so as much as it hurts to have our students learn from home, and the reason I think it hurts is mostly, the kids want to see each other. They want to see their teachers. It's been a tough call, and I appreciate the extraordinary flexibility of teachers who have planned for hybrid, and then they change their plan to remote, then they change their plan back to, okay, I'm going to do 4 days now because I have a certain special ed class. Okay, now I don't have them anymore. And our administrators who are helping to make that happen, and all the building staff who are just jumping in wherever they're asked to, and maybe, working a little differently than they ever expected to. So I did just want to take a moment to thank everybody. I wanted to remind everybody that 1 in 137 people is a lot, and we need to be very careful out there. Be careful in your personal life. Be careful with your shopping if you have to do any shopping. All of those things, and take care of one another. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes. Of course, it seems like the topic of the day is a world pandemic. I heard a piece on NPR about another school district in a much larger city than ours, in New York, and what they were going through. And while they were talking, I couldn't help but saying, yeah, we did. Yeah, that's what happened to us. Yeah, that's what happened. And some of the points have just been rattling around in my head since they did it. One was, understanding that we built 2 completely different school districts on a moment's notice. So we built really what it turned out to be 3, but at least the hybrid district and the virtual district. As we know, that was no small feat. It is truly implementing 2 fully functioning school districts at any given moment. We did that all at once. We readied, I don't know how many buildings we have off the top of my head. They were talking about hundreds of 100-year-old buildings. We're talking about at least more than 40 of rather new buildings, thankfully. So I thought, well, at least we didn't have those really old buildings to try and make safe. And we can thank our community for that, for helping us to build those new schools that we were ready to to make safe. And then the utter bewilderment of remote learning on the families and the teachers, right back. And then the confusion of bars and restaurants being open while schools are closed. So we're facing full circle all of those same points. And then the notion that by default, if anything should be open, it should be schools. And that the truth is we are equipped to keep our folks safe in our physical spaces, but for this obviously broad community spread. So it brings us right back to, this is tough. It's tough all over. And I really think that schools should be open by default and everything else should be closed. But that's not the way it headed for us. And we're going, we're going to make the best of it. I think we have a lot of work to do if we're going to stay remote and make it a meaningful educational experience. I'm going to make one more editorial comment about, and they were saying the same thing in this particular news piece, worrying about how far behind kids are going to be. Kids are going to be behind. They're going to be so far behind. And I say behind what? Behind what? Behind some artificial bar and some artificially accelerated curricular expectations of our young people in the first place. And we know we can point squarely at high stakes standardized testing for that worry. But even to let ourselves off the hook to understand that all of those expectations, they were created by us. There's nothing that says every kid has to do a certain thing by 3rd grade and every kid must know a certain thing by 5th grade and every kid has to be able to accomplish a certain thing by 15 years old. That's just not true. It's just a false premise to begin with. So when I say let us off the hook, and people say things like, well, if they have to do the grade again, they have to do the grade again. No, if we have to call it 3rd grade, but we're doing 2nd grade, that's okay, right? I want kids to be held harmless and still graduate by their 18th birthdays, but we're going to have to meet these kids where they are in the coming school year. And I really need that pressure of they're going to be behind to kind of morph into how do we reinvent the way we meet students where they are. Those benchmarks, they were created by people and they are not naturally occurring benchmarks. I can tell you that as a trained educator. That's all I have.
Thank you. I'll wrap up the board comments by my own comments, and I want to echo what other people have said, and thanking our staff, all of our staff, for trying to work through these hard times. I want to thank our students and families for their patience with all of us, with each other. These are hard times. A lot of people ask me, if we're sure that we're making the right decisions. I don't know how you can be sure that every decision that we make is right, but we are making decisions that we think are going to keep our staff and our students safe. And I think that's where we start from, and that's where we're going to end up. And then the other thing, I want to thank my fellow board members, because a lot of people don't realize that even during these times, and even though we're not traveling as much as we normally do, we are having meetings, and fellow board members are working with associations and meetings and legislation, and that work continues. And that's a lot of work that nobody else sees, but we are continuing that, usually virtually, almost totally virtually, but we do continue. So we are doing the best that we can in trying to keep track of all the legislation that affects the education of our students and affects our community. So thank you all, my fellow board members, for continuing to work on all those things that you normally work on during these times. That concludes the comments by the board. So the next section is section 6, which is the consent agenda. So those items are 6.01 through 6.21, and board members may request to pull an item from the consent agenda and move it to the discussion section of the agenda. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through them. And if anybody wants to pull something, just go ahead and chime in and ask me to pull it. So items 6.01 through 6.04 are the Human Resources Staff Development and Training Committee. And the chair is Polly Taylor Gerken, and the co-chair is Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.05 through 6.12 are Finance and Business Operation Committee. Chair, Bob Vasquez, co-chair, Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.13, Community and Public Relations Committee. There are no action items required this month. Chair is Stephanie Eichenberg, and the co-chair is Chris Varwick. Item 6.14 and 6.15 are the Board Curriculum, Instruction, and Academic Excellence Committee. Chair, Polly Taylor Gerken, co-chair, Chris Varwick. Item 6.16 and 6.17 are the Policy Committee. The chair is Sheena Barnes, and co-chair, Bob Vasquez. Item 6.18, Athletics and Student Activities Committee. There's no action. Chair is Chris Varwick, and co-chair is Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.19 is the Family and Community Engagement Committee. There are no action items this month. Chair is Bob Vasquez, co-chair is Chris Varwick. Item 6.20 through and 6.21 are the approval of the board meeting minutes. And I'd like to have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second, Varwig.
It's been moved by Stephanie Eichenberg and seconded by Chris Varwick. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Gant, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Gerken,
Yes.
and Ms. Varwick.
Yes.
Okay. The next section is section 7, which consists of reports and minutes from this month's committee meetings and are here for information and reference. No action is required on these, but I do encourage anyone who can find the time to access those. That is where we do almost all of our work for the board. We do it in committees, and it is pretty substantial work. So if anybody's interested, they should look for those reports. Section 8 is discussion. And under discussion is 8.01, which is a resolution in support of the fair school funding plan. And what I would like to do is I'd like to read that resolution so that after I read it, I'll ask for a motion and also discussion from my fellow board members. So I'm going to read it at this time. A resolution to endorse the fair school funding plan as introduced in the Senate companion bill to substitute House Bill 305 and to encourage the 133rd General Assembly to expedite the passage of the bill. Whereas the Ohio Supreme Court ruled in DeRolf versus v. State of Ohio, 1997, that Ohio's method for funding schools through the State School Foundation Program was unconstitutional under Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution. And whereas in DeRolf, the Ohio Supreme Court declared the Ohio school funding system was over-reliant on local property taxes, and as such was inherently discriminatory to children based on where they reside, for disparities exist between communities of affluence and impoverishment. And whereas since the DeRolf decision, the Ohio General Assembly has failed to create a funding system that meets Ohio's constitutional standards of securing a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state, and whereas the Ohio's solution to satisfy the Ohio Supreme Court's order has been to pass a series of biennial budgets containing politically expedient remedies that have not eliminated the over-reliance on local property tax or mitigated the discriminatory nature inherent in a series of funding fixes legislated over the last 23 years. And whereas Ohio's previous biennial budget granted by the 132nd Ohio General Assembly and effective July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019, created a funding system with capped districts and districts receiving a minimum level of funding referred to as the guarantee. And whereas the previous biennial budget identified 503 school districts out of 610, or 82%, either capped in their funding or on the guarantee, which is a testament that Ohio's funding model is not effective. And whereas Ohio's current biennial budget, crafted by the 133rd General Assembly, froze foundation funding for Ohio schools at 2019 fiscal year levels, effectively replacing all districts on the guarantee, in which funding levels subsequently been cut due to the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic. And whereas the current school funding system in Ohio lacks a rational basis for determining both the cost of educating students and how the funding of education is shared between the state and local taxpayers. And whereas Representative Robert Culp and Representative John Patterson convened a statewide work group made up of 8 practicing school district CFOs and treasurers and 8 practicing superintendents, the Culp-Patterson work group, to devise a new formula and reorganizing Ohio, or recognizing the Ohio needs an overhaul in its school funding system, have spent the last 3 years determining the inputs necessary to fund a thorough and efficient system of common schools and reduces the over-reliance on local property tax and creates equity in the state foundation system. And whereas the Culp-Patterson work group carefully analyzed national research, best practices, actual Ohio school district spending data, and drew on their own extensive experience in educating students and operating school districts to make recommendations for a school funding system that meets the needs of Ohio students in the 21st century. And whereas the Culp-Patterson work group developed recommendations that laid out a rational, transparent, comprehensive, and most of all, fair system for funding schools based on the actual cost of providing a basic education for all students in Ohio, the base cost. And whereas the Culp-Patterson work group developed a method of sharing the funding of the base cost between the state and local taxpayers that is easy to understand and based on a fair, defensible measure of the capacity to generate funds locally. And whereas the Culp-Patterson work group identified and provided a framework for providing additional resources to meet needs beyond those of basic education, including the areas of the social, emotional, safety, and mental health of students, the additional challenges driven by students living in poverty with special needs, with limited English proficiency, and who are academically gifted. And whereas the Culp-Patterson work group developed recommendations for properly funding career technology centers, educational service centers, and charter and community schools, And whereas, based on the research and work outlined above, the Cup-Patterson Work Group produced and recommended the Fair School Funding Plan, which was introduced in House Bill 305 and is currently incorporated into and improved upon in a companion bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 376. And whereas the Ohio General Assembly and the Governor of Ohio have an opportunity to devise a funding formula as outlined in the Fair School Funding Plan that is an investment in Ohio's children and Ohio's future. And whereas, in addition to the legislators' failure to create a funding system that meets Ohio's constitutional standards, the Ohio General Assembly enacted and has continued to enact legislation over the years that dramatically expands the Ohio Ed Choice Scholarship Voucher Program, Ed Choice, to increase the number of Ohio public school districts and the number of students in these public school districts eligible for Ed Choice, thereby further depleting the state's funding of the affected public school districts, including Toledo Public Schools. And whereas the Ed Choice diverts public dollars to provide schools that are not held accountable to the same grading standards of education as public school districts, thus forcing the public to fund private, unregulated entities while leaving the public school system without proper and adequate funding and under a public-only grading system that is fundamentally flawed and negates the whole basis upon which Ed Choice legislation is built. And whereas any solution to the school funding crisis in Ohio must include reconsideration of the Ohio Ed Choice Scholarship Program in its entirety. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Toledo City School District that Section 1, the board hereby formally endorses the Fair School Funding Plan as introduced in Senate Bill 376 of the 133rd General Assembly, the Senate companion bill to substitute House Bill 305 to ensure that K-12 schools in Ohio are funded using a rational school funding system that meets the needs of all Ohio students in the 21st century. Section 2, the treasurer is authorized to deliver or cause to be delivered a certified copy of this resolution to community leaders, to members of the Ohio House of Representatives and Ohio Senate, including Representative Greenspan and Senator Dolan, and to the office of Governor Michael DeWine. Section 3, the resolution shall be enforced and effect immediately upon its adoption. Section 4, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning and relating to the adoption of this resolution were adopted in an electronic meeting and or open meeting of its board in compliance with all legal requirements, including House Bill 197, and as permitted by Ohio law. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved, Varwig.
Second it, Barnes.
It's been moved by Chris Varwig and seconded by Sheena Barnes. Is there any discussion?
Mr.
Yes.
Vasquez?
Yes.
Sure. I wanted to say a couple of things. I submitted probably the most straightforward and fluffiest testimony I've written to a committee recently in support of the fair school funding. And I call it fluffy because to me, this is such a slam dunk that we need to fix the system, that you don't need to draw a lot of comparisons and you don't need to drown them in data. All you have to do is, and thank you very much for reading that enormously long resolution, Mr. Vasquez, out loud. But I would also add, when 500 out of 600 of your schools don't fit the system, your system is failing. And so I do want to focus a little bit on the paragraph that talked about, solutions, also including a fix for the Ed Choice voucher program. And I'd like to make clear that about a week ago, Senate Bill 89 passed through the House and Senate in sort of a surprise last minute push. I think it was a travesty. And I think it impacts anything related to this fair school funding, and they need to really think about it. I think it was a last ditch effort to protect the funneling of Ohio tax dollars to private schools during a time when we already funnel Ohio tax dollars to private schools. This just increases it. I'd like to make very clear that a large number of elementary school students get more state tax money from the state and that live in our district that go to a private school get more state tax money for their students than we do on a per student basis if they participate in the Ed Choice voucher program. And that's disgusting. I can't tolerate or support that. Why does a private school get more money than we do? And let me back this up with a little data. When we look at a couple of local schools that receive a lot of Ed Choice funding, I look at one high school where 68% of their students are students who have an Ed Choice voucher, and they live in the TPS district. When I look at their proficiency in math scores, they have 15% of their students that are Ed Choice students that are proficient in math. We have 23.9. Now, I'd like those numbers to be in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and I do think that's a reflection of the system and the test. But the fact is, we're still doing better, yet they're taking money from our students to try to educate kids at a lesser rate. I'm not cherry picking, because if I look at their English proficiency ratings, where they are at 33%, we are at 40.5%. We are doing far better teaching our kids the things that get measured in standardized tests, which frankly isn't the most important thing in the world, but we also offer career tech in a way that nobody else can, because we're big and we're comprehensive. We have so much more to offer. And yet, because somebody has a slick marketing program and someone else had a slick political program to funnel money towards private schools from taxpayer funded dollars in a way that nets, let me remind you, elementary schools students, many of them, more money than we are getting per student for us from the state. If you're a regular Joe student, they get more money. Because why? Because do we have a state preference for religion? I just severely object to this. It is okay to be religious, but should you get a preference? Should you get more money from the state if you are an average Joe student who happens to go to one of these schools in K through 8? The other piece that I think is important is you can look at a local elementary school and you can take all three of our schools, one of which struggles a lot because there's a lot of kids who really need a lot of help from the community there. Another of which you would think of is just an average Joe school, and another of which you would think of is a solid working class neighborhood. And we still beat that school that gets 87% of their funds from money that's taken away from our students. So that is not okay, and it shouldn't stand. So this fair school funding initiative is appropriate. I'm absolutely disgusted that Senate Bill 89 was proposed and put through at the last minute to try to circumvent and establish a pot of money they could spread around to private schools before they did this fair school funding initiative. And I will remember that forever, and I will lobby against that forever. Thank you.
Other comments? Anyone?
Yes.
Mrs. Varwood?
First of all, I love our school board. I love the members of our school board because they're so passionate about doing the right things for public education. First, I would like to take the opportunity. One, yes, I am in support of this bill, but I wanted to make sure that we put a little caveat on there about the Ed Choice voucher, because we all know the underhanded and not allowing public input on Senate Bill 89. So again, it's almost like a House Bill 70 all over again. Lame duck session, throw it in there. They're just going to sweep it on through. And it just pains me because we know in our district that we are doing better in so many areas. I would put our district up amongst anyone. Our teachers do great. Our staff does a phenomenal job, and our kids are good kids. And I am so sick of hearing about how urbans are failures. We are not. Where do they align it with? That flawed report card. And until they fix the flawed report card, and I don't even want them to fix it. I just want them to blow it up. I want to do a redo. As a matter of fact, not only do we need to blow it up, we in our district have helped create a new report card, if you want to call it a report card, for the state of Ohio. And I would encourage all districts to participate in those efforts. I do want to thank our legislators here in our Northwest Ohio region specifically. And Senator Fetter by far is gangbusters when it comes to public education and in support of it. And I just want to read her words that she just stated, just a section of it that she just stated on the floor the other day. Until we have a fair and accurate system that is accountable to the public, we cannot continue to arbitrarily fund these private schools, and we cannot assume that our ideology here should be any school is better than a public school. And I appreciate the fact that she's there fighting for us when so many across the state of Ohio are not. And to take it a step further, having attended a meeting the other day with school board members from across the state of Ohio, I was provided information from a particular school board member in a rural area, not to say that they all think this way, but that it was, it was conservative viewpoints and those liberal teachers that are out there, and kind of pitted the urbans in such a poor light when that school board member has not probably even stepped foot in a urban area. But it just pains me that we need so many people educated. But she was trying to tell me that this is what the legislators are thinking down there in Columbus, is that they don't really concern themselves with vouchers. It's just they're trying to help the poor families in the urban districts. I can't tell you the restraint that I had to have in that particular meeting. Fortunately, we were virtual. So I just am so, I'm just tired. I'm tired of hearing about how horrible urbans are and when we're not. You know what? We know that the report card is flawed, and you know what? We're finding a solution for it, right? We know that high stake testing is, we don't even need it. We don't need it. And it creates so many different avenues, right? That are an angst to our students as well as our staff. We don't need academic distress commissions. It's irrelevant. We don't need them. They've done more damage in those particular districts than not having them. So I just, this fair funding, I'm excited about the possibility that it's going to come to fruition. I certainly hope that Governor DeWine signs it, but I also hope that he knows all of the different agendas that are going along on the side of it. And I hope that down at the state, they pay attention. I'm not willing to give up on urban districts just yet. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Just raise your hand. I can see you on the have a comment. Go ahead, Miss Polly Taylor Kirkin.
I would like to thank all of my board members who remain engaged in many of these state level assaults on public education to keep us informed and up to speed. It's another way that this board, sort of divides and conquers. We all have our areas that we contribute in, and we can't all do everything. So I really appreciate that. I would go as far as to say that these policies are, and maybe even those institutions that take advantage of these policies are full-blown exploitation. And when policies are written to take advantage of the same people that they think are somehow need to be saved from them, like they need to save us from ourselves, like they need to save these kids from our urban disaster of an education system that we have. And they not only pull the money from the urban system, and give more of it to the exploiters that are taking these students, but they're not doing any better when they get there. So that's the part that really troubles me, is that it's set up to prey on those students who may need more and struggle more, and feeding them to a system that doesn't have all of the same comprehensive sets of resources to do so. So it just makes no sense. It's like so many other policies that contribute to keeping folks under-resourced, and outcomes are not any better. So I'm with you on it, but I would go as far as to say that it is an example of exploitation at the hands of the government.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes?
First, I just want to thank my fellow board members. Chris is a firecracker for making sure, fair public education is an opportunity for our kids. And Stephanie always have the numbers. I could even do that in a year. So thank you, Stephanie, for providing those numbers. And Polly and Bob for just supporting, making sure that our students, our teachers are getting a fair shake at this. It's the saddest thing to me is when we say fighting for public education, we actually are fighting against economical and racial bias. When you think of the schools that are hit the hardest with this, ed choice vouchers, it's the ones that have high students of color and have high poverty areas. And if we keep letting these folks in the government dictate this, we're going to keep having the same situation. So I encourage everyone to keep making your voices loud. Let's see, can we get some people in there to run that will change and actually fight with us for fair education in public schools? Thank you.
Mr. Vasquez, I'm
Yes,
sorry,
go
quick
ahead.
follow-up just to make sure,
Sure.
because it's, you read the resolution, and just to make sure anybody who's listening wants to see it, it is on board docs, and it is available for folks to see on board docs. Thank you.
And we do want as many people as possible to read that, see it, and be aware of it. As always, I reserve my comments for last. But, and what happens is that when I do that, everybody says everything that I was going to say, but better. So I don't mind that. But I am going to echo some of the things that other people have said. And I'm going to call my fellow board members out because I'm very, very proud of our entire board. And I'm going to call them out because all of the board members, as has been said before, each one of us as individuals bring different experiences. And I mean that by life experiences, professional experiences. We bring a certain skill set to all of this, and we have a great mix. And what we do is we get out of each other's way to allow each person with their skills and their experience to be able to optimize what they bring to the board. And we do that very well as a board. So I'm going to call you out, Sheena Barnes, Chris Varwig, Stephanie Eichenberg, and Polly Taylor Gherkin. Very proud of all of you. Like I said before, this is the work we do. This is the work that we think is important. It doesn't stop. We keep doing it. It's not as visible sometimes because of the pandemic, but we are continuing to do it. I think the only other thing I want to say is that I don't know how else or where else that the Supreme Court of Ohio would declare something unconstitutional in 1997, and they would allow for things to continue as they were. It just, to me, it's just unbelievable. So I'm really looking forward to this. What I'm afraid of is that when people down in the legislature get a hold of it, they might change it and change it for not for the better. So that does worry me. The other thing I want to say is that, it's a shame that politics has to drive education. You would think that education, health, some of these very human kinds of categories and actions would be saved from politics just because they're fair and just. And it's just unbelievable to me that we are still trying to fix this system that is so wrong. And what also bothers me is that actions are taken, and I will say metaphorically, in the dead of night and very quickly and not transparent, that are negative, have a negative impact on public education. If they were so good, why wouldn't they do them in the light of day with full transparency? That should be a message to anybody who knows what's going on. So that disturbs me very much. The only other thing I want to say is I want to thank Dr. Durant and what he's doing. This is a section, I realize that for the board to have discussion about the resolution. But I'm going to speak for Dr. Durant, and he does a lot of work with the Urban 8, and he keeps the board members abreast of what the superintendents and the school officials are saying and recommending, and the good things that are contained in legislation, and things that might be problematic for us. So Dr. Durant, thank you for working with the board on all of these things. So those are my comments. If there are no further comments, we can go ahead and vote on this resolution.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yeah, yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Gerken,
Yes.
Ms. Varwig.
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll make sure we get that resolution down to Mr. Gant and Dr. Durant. You'll have to make sure that resolution gets down to the legislature, the governor, and make sure we get it out to the public as soon as possible, because they're acting on these things like quickly. Do you have something, Ms. Barnes?
Yes, maybe it's this hashtag petty. Is there any way we can all sign it and send it to them so they know that we know what they're doing in the dark? Is that something we can do, or just being petty on my end?
I believe the resolutions are signed by us, Ms. Mazur, Dr. Durant.
I think we've done some certified signature resolutions that we've sent around.
Okay, that's good. It makes me happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, Ms. Barnes, we can always send it in the light of day for them. How about that?
I love that idea.
All right. Section, it takes us to section 9. Are there any walk-ins?
No, there are not.
Okay. Section 10 is the early childhood education action items, 10.01 through 10.03. And for that, I will turn that over to Mrs. Polly Taylor Gerken.
I'm just going to say that we are going to pass it off to Dr. Allen. I was going to say we had a great committee meeting this month, and there's always something going on in the early childhood committee, and we barely ever come out of there without some kind of action items for you. One of my questions, Doc, as usual, Dr. Allen, is whether we can bundle these. It looks like as the two contracts perhaps could be bundled, but the carryover request would require a separate vote if my analysis serves me.
That is accurate. 10.01 and 10.02 are our annual contract renewals for our delegates, JLCAP and Lucas County Family Council, and they can be bundled. And 10.03 is a carryover request to allow us some flexibilities in spending the remaining CARES Act funding that was allocated to one of our delegates.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. So I would request a motion that we vote on 10.01 and 10.02 bundled, which are both the contract items.
So moved.
Okay, I wasn't sure who got it first.
Polly, go ahead. I'll second it.
All right, Polly Taylor Gherkin moves, and Sheena Barnes second. Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, Mr. Gant, would you call the roll?
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Gerken,
Yes.
Ms. Varwig.
Yes.
Thank you. Now I'd like to have a motion on 10.03, the carryover request. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved, Eichenberg.
Moved by
Second,
Ms. Eichenberg,
second Gherkin.
second, Ms. Gherkin. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Gant, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Vasquez,
Yeah, yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Gerken,
Yes.
Ms. Varwig.
Yes.
Thank you. That takes us to section 11, which are the agenda that consist of the early childhood education reports and minutes from this month's meeting, committee meetings, and are provided for your information and reference. There's no action that is required. So we'll go right on to section 12. Are there any early childhood education walk-ins this evening?
There are none.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. So that will take us to section 13. And that is the superintendent. Do you have any comments?
Just want to wish everyone a Thanksgiving holiday. I'm thankful for each and every one of you, the staff, the community, as well as my own family. I think it's just appreciation and kudos to the point that was echoed in essence of Ms. Gerken. Some of the things that we poured off with board as well as staff amongst the school district to generate a virtual academy, to generate a hybrid model, as well as a traditional system. I can tell you that the urban aides as well as others are always requesting that I allow some of the members of our team to talk about how we pull certain things off. So just within that, I think it just shows the fruit of our labor, the work that we put together, our great relationship and how we make things happen. And so just want to be thankful and make sure that you know I'm thankful to you and TPS proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durant. Mr. Gant, as the Treasurer Pro Tem, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
No, sir.
All right. I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity, though. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing for us.
Thank you.
Board members, comments, just raise your hand. I can see you if you have any comments. Sheena Barnes.
I just want to say thank you to my fellow board members and administration as it's coming up on my first year of becoming a board member. And thank you, Mr. Gant and Dr. Durant, for answering my calls 100 times when I have questions or demands or try to do too much. Y'all are very nice and kind to me. I guess it's the first year showing, and then after that, you'll hang up on me. And just thank you to my board members for, letting me find out, teaching me stuff, sharing information so I can stay abreast of things I need to know to make me a good board member for TPS. And also, I want to thank Amy Natashak and her colleagues for just doing a really, really good job. I may not understand everything they do, but from what I'm seeing, she's definitely a great person to have in the ring fighting for a fair education. And that's all. Thank you.
I just want to respond to Ms. Barnes. They said that Ms. Barnes never has any demands. So I just want to let you know that. Ms. Varwig, any comments at this time?
I was going to. Again, before I do my thank yous, I just want to remind everybody that EdChoice really is predatory lending. Done, right? So on that, I'll switch gears and say thank you to our staff. Again, phenomenal what they've been doing out in the field And to our families, our hearts are with you. We know it's a tough year. We want our students back in 5 days a week. But until this pandemic gets under control, that's not going to happen. To the staff that's on here tonight, thank you for what you do each and every day. I know that it's hard work and you take a lot of flack, and just know that we all care about what you're doing and about you as individuals. So thank you for what you're doing. And then happy Thanksgiving to my fellow board members. Enjoy your time with your household families, right? And I hope everyone is able to do that so that way, going forward, we can have everybody here and we don't have to worry about missing the seat at the table.
Thank you. Any other board members have any comments?
Mr. Vasquez, I do want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. It's a bit, I think for nearly all of us, it's the weirdest year we've ever lived through. And if you lived through something weirder, my sympathies to you. I do want to also remind our families and our teachers, if you happen to watch this later, I know we don't have a lot of people on the meeting. There are flyers being sent out to our families regularly from the schools, and a lot of times they have information about where you can get food if you have been struggling with food insecurity. I know that's more common right now because of the high unemployment rate. So I don't want anyone to go without Thanksgiving food. Please check your emails. You might find, different community agencies who have giveaways that they want to help people who are struggling. Some people have done just fine and everything's been normal and perfect through this pandemic with their employment, and others, if you have really, really been infected, and my heart goes out to you, and know that there are a lot of community resources that want to support you through that. So, check those emails you get from your building principal. Sometimes they have great resources. Thanks.
Any other comments from board members? Ms. Gerken?
I just want to make a comment that's kind of unusual because we're proud of all of our appointments, our administrative appointments and promotions and so forth. But I just need to call out an appointment that was in our agenda today from Mr. Korfman, who is going to be our assistant treasurer. And for lots of reasons, that's a particularly poignant appointment for our treasurer, and he's not here for me to congratulate him on finding the talent and elevating him in his department. I worked with Mr. Korfman when he was with the office with Head Start or Early Childhood, and we knew then that he was on an ascent, and we were sorry to see him as he move along, but it's always good to see our talent moving up in the organization. So just a special congratulations to him, and particularly Mr. Steck-Schulte.
Thank you. And again, my comments are last, and I just want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And I want to say on this particular Thanksgiving Day that, as somebody had mentioned, with all of our staff, our teachers, all of our staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, and all of our administration, just want you to know that we care about you as individuals. We kind of refer to you as staff sometimes, and we refer to you as administration, and we use those words just to summarize so that we can be expedient. But on a day like or a holiday like Thanksgiving, it's when we will think about you and be thankful. And I can take the time to do that this Thanksgiving because it's just going to be my wife and I, since we're abiding by the directions of trying to keep our groups small. So this Thanksgiving, you will all be at my table as we celebrate this holiday. So I want to thank you. And with that, I'd call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Barwick.
Seconded. Eichenberg.
Been moved by Varwig and seconded by Mrs. Eichenberg. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Gant, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Ms. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Gerken,
Yes.
Ms. Varwig.
Yes.
Meeting.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a happy Thanksgiving.